So today I'll be reviewing the UNDONE Terra from Hong Kong microbrand UNDONE. Now, UNDONE is best known for their collaborative watches as well as their custom-made personalizable watches. But here we have the Terra, which is their take on the military field watch aesthetic. This is not a first for this is a sort of a first for UNDONE in terms of field watch aesthetic. But previously, they've released pilot watches in the Type XX. They've released the base cap, which is an interpretation of like a vintage diver. So this is their latest iteration of what they perceive to be a vintage or historically accurate um, field watch. Alright, without further ado, let's delve into a review. Let's start with the specifications. So firstly, I'm very happy to report that UNDONE finally uses a double dome sapphire crystal. So unlike some of the models I've mentioned just now, the Type SX and the base cam, the Terra here uses a double dome sapphire crystal, which is very scratch resistant as compared to the Lexan polycarbonate or the K1 hardened mineral crystal on some of their previous models. So this is definitely a great step up in the right direction. Now moving on to the movement, it's powered by the ubiquitous Seiko NH85 movement. Nothing special, is not decorated as well, but at this sub 500 Singapore dollar price point, you can't go wrong. It's a workhorse movement that's very reliable. Now there's also Loom, which I'll pop out a Loom shop here. Interestingly, UNDONE uses two types of Loom here. You have a bluish Loom on the numerals, and you have the regular green Loom on the hands and indices. So that's interesting. Now overall, for a sub 500 Sing dollar watch, I would say that the Terra has quite good specifications for the price. Again, finally we get a double dome sapphire crystal. You get a NH35 movement. You get a very nice strap, and even two kinds of loom on the dial. So it ticks every box, so to say. Now let's talk about the design of the watch. So let's be real, the design of the Terra, as you guys can see here, it doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but it's still a very pleasing interpretation of a field watch. Now UNDONE, like I mentioned, is probably the best at offering its own take on classic watch design. They have the UNDONE Urban Vintage, which is their take on the vintage chronograph, with the base cam, which I mentioned, which is their take on the dive watch. You have the Tropical, which was their take on your vintage tropical dials. You have the Type XX, one of my personal favorite, which is their take on like a sterile bicompax pilot's chronograph. And finally, we have the Terra, which looks like it's a field watch out of the 1950s, with the dial making a bit of the look. Reminds me of the look of the Dirty Dozen field watches. You have the iconic triangle at 12. You have those full patina at 3, 6, 9, and 12 positions. And there's even, let me see if I can bring it closer to the camera. I don't know if you guys can see, but there's even like a subtle sort of bit blasted grain texture to the black dial that gives the watch like a well-worn, better scarred look. A very nice dial. As nice as the dial is, I would say that the case of the watch is actually my favorite aspect of the UNDONE Terra. So first and foremost, this is unlike most field watches. This isn't a round case. This is a tortoiseshell case, right? And it's a more unique case shape that is definitely more striking on the wrist. And you also get a very nice juxtaposition of texture. So you get like brush finishes at the front and the side, but you have this significantly sized polished beveled edges that runs along the edges of the case. So very nice contrast in your brush and your polish textures that I really like. It really adds to a very combined with the tortoiseshell case, it really adds to a very striking look on the wrist. Look at that. Look at how it plays in the light. Very nice case. When I saw the case, I was instantly impressed. Alright, now let me strap this onto my wrist and show you guys how it looks. Alright, here you go. Let me do a slow wrist roll. So as you can see, it looks very nice on the wrist because of the case. Really, the case really is the first thing that jumps out at you. The dial is traditionally, inspired by a few watches, so it's not the eye-catching, but it's the case that really jumps out at you. Now, the UNDONE Terra has a smaller case size of just 37mm wide. So this is just 37mm, but on my 7-inch wrist, it still fits very well. It really feels like a more vintage, heritage style watch. It's also quite thin at 12.8mm thick. So if you have a smaller wrist size, or you just prefer a smaller vintage sizing, the Terra is a modern interpretation by sort of like a vintage dimensions, which I really like. Now overall, I think that this UNDONE Terra is a very simple package but executed well. The dial harkens back to a bygone era of field watches, And the tortoise case, look, let me just bring it closer to the camera. The tortoise case, which possess a nice contrast of both polish and brush textures, really differentiates it from the rest of the few watches out there. Now, in conclusion, I would say that the Undyne Terra is a no-nonsense execution that is bound to delight lovers of few watches. The specifications of the watch are good. You have sapphire crystal, nice strap, Seiko NH35 movement, Loom. The look itself is full of heritage charm, and the case is well finished, and the sizing is also historically accurate on the smaller side. The sub 500 Singapore dollar price point is great as well. So I think Undyne has filled a great niche here. I can't really think of many other few watches at this sub $500 price point that is as good as complete a package as the Terra is. Now, for those of you that are interested in any of Undyne watches, you can use the promo code WASOSHIOK for 10% off. After the 10% off, so the Terra is a MSRP of 395 USD. After the 10% off, you can get it at 355 USD, or about 470 Singapore dollars, which I think is good value for the price. I've always preferred Undyne's standard offering, such as the Urban Vintage, a chronograph, the Base Camp, the Type XX, and now the Terra, as compared to some of their more expensive, more flashier, collaborative models. And I think I should mention before I leave that the Terra is a brand new design as well, so it's not just another dial, another case or whatever. It's completely a brand new design for Undyne. So yeah, with that in mind, I can't wait to see what new designs Undyne unveils in 2021. Now, if you like this video review, do subscribe to the channel and give this video a like and share it around. As always, there'll be another review coming out tomorrow, so I'll see you guys then. Ciao.